Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. Welcome back to Feminine Roadmap Podcast, the podcast that helps you navigate the challenges and the changes of midlife and empowers you to live a more vibrant second half. Today, if you find us on YouTube, please don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss any more of these amazing conversations. And if you are on a podcast platform, please remember to subscribe and share this conversation. Today, we're going to be tapping into the topic of menopause. My guest is coming back because her wealth of information is so amazing. And today, we're going to be talking about how she supports women moving through the menopause transition by helping them navigate it with ease. My guest is Angela Counsel. She's a naturopath and a menopause coach. Angela, thank you so much for coming back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gina. It's great to be here again.
I'm so excited to have you back. Of course, your wealth of information the last time was so powerful for women. I'd love to talk some more about your mission and message around menopause. And you have a program that you do. It's a 5-day menopause program that's free. And you had this video about the brain connection. So I'd like to jump off first around that topic of the brain and menopause.
Yep. So what do you want to know about the brain? It changes as we're coming through the menopause transition. And this is due to our shifting hormones. Now, I also want to say that a lot of what I talk about today comes from the work of Dr. Lisa Mosconi and also Dr. Luann Brizardine, because they've done a lot. There's a lot more research being done on women as they age and their brains. And this is particularly from the point of view of Alzheimer's and dementia, because we do know that women appear to have a growth of Alzheimer's and dementia as they age. And there has been a link found between the lowering levels of estrogen and this link. But we also need to be very careful of kind of saying, well, there's a causative effect. So like I've got lower estrogen, so I will get Alzheimer's or I will get dementia, and because that's a link that's kind of being made. And we have to remember that these type of brain conditions are multi-causative. So there's lots of different causes. And I know that there's a lot of talk about whether or not you just use HRT, keep those estrogen levels up, and then you're never going to get Alzheimer's or dementia. Not necessarily so. And there is still no real link that actually says that taking estrogen will prevent you getting these neurodegenerative diseases. That there is no link there. And even all the menopause societies in the world basically are saying there's no link. But there is a bit of a narrative going around. Well, if you want to stop getting these conditions, make sure you're on HRT or menopause hormone therapy, whatever you want to call it, because it's going to prevent it. Not true. It may, but there's many other things that we can do. And this is where I kind of sit in the kind of realm of menopause, is that there's one kind of argument that says every woman needs to be on HRT for the rest of their life. And then we've got women out there who are now looking scared because they're seeing these posts on social media from some of these really well-known doctors who are saying, every woman must be on HRT. And then they're going, oh, but what about me? I've had breast cancer. I've been told I can't go on HRT. I've been told it's too big a risk. I have clotting issues and things like that. And then there's women who say, well, I don't want to be on HRT. And that's not being answered. And these women are really afraid because they're thinking, oh, I'm going to get these diseases. And particularly women who've had mothers or your grandmothers who've had these diseases, then they're even more afraid, because we do know that there is a genetic link. So there is a gene that if you happen to have that gene, that you are a higher risk. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of part of where I work, is actually understanding a person's genetic profile and knowing that just because you have a gene doesn't mean that gene has to be expressed. So if you think of it, an easy way to just explain it is basically, if we think of the gene as, we've got a gun, we've got a bullet. The gene is the bullet. But until you fire the gun, it does no damage. But if you fire the gun, now we've got damage going on. So what do we do to not fire the gun? And this is where we've got to look at all the other risk factors for these brain conditions. And that is the food that we eat, the way we move our body, the way we use our brain the toxins that we're exposed to, and just our general mindset. If we're in a fear place that, everything's going to be doom and gloom and I'm going to get all these disease, energetically, we're kind of pulling that in as well. So if we look at all those other factors, then yes, we've still got the estrogen issue, but we can actually reduce all the risk by addressing the food that we eat and actually understanding that all those 5 factors influence the gene. So we won't turn the gene on, even though you might have the gene. You don't turn the gene on if you're basically living in alignment with what your body requires. So is that a good place to start?
Yes, I love the way that you explain that, because it's easy to get myopic on a topic and to hyper focus on it. And that zooming out that you just did for us, like, okay, look at all of these other ways that we can live our lives to support our bodies. Because you and I, in the past conversation, talked about this is a natural progression that the body takes. And the one thing I wanted to bring up that you said the first time we talked 2 years ago, which was that menopause is puberty in reverse. That has been the most profound way to describe that this is the way we're designed. This is a natural process. And so fear doesn't need to be a part of it anymore.
Correct. And if we talk about just the brain, I don't know if you can remember. I can't. It's a while ago. What was your brain like when you were only 10 or 12? It wasn't fully developed. It was kind of going everywhere and going crazy.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is hormonal because we've got all these hormones running around. And, when we've got a young girl who's doing crazy things and saying crazy things and all that stuff, we just go, oh, she's coming through puberty. We accept that. So why can't we accept that for women as they're coming through menopause as well? Because once again, we've basically got a rollback of those hormones. So, the brain is used to having a certain level of hormone when we're in our reproductive years. And when we, our hormones drop down, the brain's still kind of crying out for that hormone. It will adjust, and the body can still make, particularly estrogen, well, it can make all hormones, but it doesn't necessarily make it from the ovaries. So when we're in reproductive years, a lot of our hormones are coming from our ovaries. Once where ovaries aren't working anymore, and we have got no eggs, then there's other cells in the body that can actually produce estrogen. But the brain just needs to learn to redirect its messaging from the ovaries to other areas. And adrenal glands plays a really big role in this, because this is where we make a lot of hormones in our adrenal glands when we're in our menopause transition and beyond. And many women are exhausted, they're stressed. And so the adrenal glands, if there's only limited resources, it will always make the stress hormones first, because stress hormones need to keep you alive, whereas reproductive hormones don't need to keep you alive. So, the body kind of works on a priority basis. What do I need to stay alive? Its main function is to stay alive, and it will shut down other organs and systems if it's lacking the resources. And the majority of our resources comes from the food that we eat. And this is why it's really important that we're eating food that's full of nutrition.
Right.
Because the body's not necessarily looking for food. That's nice. It's pleasure. The body wants nutrient. It wants nutrition, because the nutrition, the vitamins, the minerals, the antioxidants, that's what fires all of our cells and, keeps all of our systems working, gets our brain going and all of that. It comes from the nutrition, but nutrition comes to us packaged ideally in food. Yes, you can take supplements, but ideally our first place to be getting nutrition from should be our food. But the standard, American, Australian, Western diet is very nutrient deficient, because we're eating packages, we're eating fast food, and we're just not eating, many people are not eating real food. And this is a big issue. And I know over in the States, there's a bit of a real issue, because you have like food deserts. That's not something we necessarily experience that much here in Australia, but, I've worked with clients in the States, and I understand that this is an issue, because sometimes all you've got is the packaged stuff. There's not a lot of fresh food around, which really, when we think about it, in our countries, in our way of world, it is a really sad testament to our way of life that fresh food is not available to everybody. And I won't get into, big corp and things like that. But really, I mean, just, and I don't live in the US, so I see the US from outside, but it's like, how is it possible that a country that is so strong, that is so rich, that has so much vastness in land, has areas where fresh food is not available? It's like, how does that happen? How is it? And it's impacting our health. And yes, there's parts of Australia as well, but I don't think we have as big an issue. Maybe we do. Maybe I just don't see it. In central, moving off the coast. I mean, the majority of Australians live on the coastline somewhere, but once we get into regional areas, yes, they're probably having similar type of issues. But it's like, how can that happen? Because really, we come from rich, affluent countries. We're not coming from third world countries. So I know this isn't a menopause conversation, but I don't know where that came. But I think this is part of the conversation we need to be having, because women are the ones, whether we like it or not, women are the ones that feed the family, that feed the world. And I think women, as they age, they're the ones who are going to make the difference. They're the ones who are going to stand up and say, hey, why is it that I don't have fresh food available to my family? Why is it not affordable? I think it's women in this next stage of life that actually, they're the ones who can stand up and say, and take that power back. And this is, so what's that got to do with the brain? But it's got a lot to do with the brain, because the more we think, the more we analyze, the more we look, we're using our brain. That's what we need to do. It's when we kind of shut down and just stick in the paradigm and just basically do thing by rote and habit and things like that, our brain will shut down, because we're just not using it and we're not feeding it the right nutrition. And we need to be getting out, and spending time out in nature and things like that. So it might, as I said, I had no idea where that conversation was going to go, but where it went, it obviously needs to go there, because this is the things that, we as women need to be standing up and saying, hey, I'm not going to accept that just because I'm getting older that I have to live with what is here. And I'm not going to live with the fact that, you tell me that because you're going through menopause, you're going to get dementia, you're going to get Alzheimer's. It's like, what can I do? Take the power back and step into your own power, and know that, yes, estrogen plays a role, but it's not the whole picture. So if we don't get hung up on estrogen, what else can I do? I can be looking at the food. I can be looking at, am I moving my body? Am I getting outside? Am I going outside and seeing some nature? And even if that is just a little strip of park down the end of the road, getting out there and breathing in, exchanging with the trees, carbon dioxide and oxygen. We don't do that when we spend all our time inside a room. We're not exchanging energy. We're not exchanging that. The nutrient, the biggest nutrient we require is oxygen. We need plants for that. And if you can't get outside, put plants around you. And then look at the toxins, look at the environment. Is there things in your environment? Because we know that there are chemicals that cross the blood-brain barrier, and they start to destroy the brain. So what have you got going on in your life? Are there things that you could swap out rather than using toxins to clean, things like that? Think simple things like lemon juice and bicarb. They're pretty benign. And there are other things where you can swap out that don't need to, and actually lemon juice and bicarb is probably cheaper than the fancy cleaner with all the everything in it anyway. It's like, and some of it is just going back to some basics. And where can we look at it? We don't have to do it all at once. But what are the simple changes that I can make, knowing that these influence my brain, that I've got control of? And then, yes, if there's other issues going on, maybe you want to take hormones, but not as a preventative for these conditions. We haven't had these hormones around long enough really to say, and this is why you'll find that none of the research says it is a preventative. None of it says that, because we haven't done the research to show that. Because it takes quite a few, decades to get through and say, oh, yes or no. Because there are women who've been on hormones who continue to get Alzheimer's, who continue to get dementia. So we know, because there's other things we've got to be looking at. And, Alzheimer's is now known as diabetes type 2. So we know that food is playing, diabetes type 3. We know that food is playing it's a metabolic condition. We know that food and lifestyle plays a massive role in all of this.
It's interesting because as you were talking, I was thinking through, we have toxins that come in through our food. We have toxins that come in through our cleaning supplies. We have toxins that come through the air and our water. But I think there's also that conversation around the toxicity that we allow into our eyes and ears and our mind. And I'm curious what your take on that kind of toxicity, how that impacts our bodies.
Social media. And it is. I mean, because I'm on social media because I run a business, and I do get, because I basically say, and I'm a lot more open with it now, whereas before I wasn't quite so open with it, but it's like, I'm open with the fact that I support women as they go through menopause who don't want to or can't take HRT. So I'm quite open about the fact that HRT is not within my programs. What I do, number one, it's not within my scope of practice. Number two, because I do truly believe, and I've seen it with myself and my clients, that you can move through this time of life without the additional hormones when you understand what's going on. So when I go out there and I say that, I get lots of stuff coming back at me. And for a long time, I didn't like it. And which is why I kind of backed off. And I'm going, no, actually, no, I need to be out there. So it sometimes is, if you can get off social media, that's great, because social media is very, very divisive, particularly on this topic. And, and you can stand up and, what gets me is we've got, these people going, oh, HRT. And then if I stand there and say, but I was able to get through menopause without HRT and I'm going really, really well and doing this, then all of a sudden they all just start yelling at me, well, you don't know what everybody else is going through. And they lessen my experience because it's not their experience. And this is where I actually think that there's a big pharmacological drive behind this, this division. And we've seen this, get into the patriarchy, but we've seen this before. We see this, you see this when it's like, are you going to have a natural birth or a cesarean birth? Are you going to breastfeed or bottle feed? And it's we're pitting women against each other. And I think there's outside forces doing that, because when these discussions and these arguments are happening, the topic is being spoken about and people are benefiting from it. Whichever side you're on, there is a benefit to it. The pharmacy, what are they all called? The big pharma are making a lot of money. They're making billions of dollars. Before the Women's Health Initiative, the highest selling drug in the world was hormone therapy.
Wow.
And they went from the highest selling drug in the world to the lowest selling drug in the world with the Women's Health Initiative. They lost a lot of money. They lost billions upon billions. So they need to get that back. They've got to get that back. And they, yes, they've made some changes and now they do bioidenticals and all of this, but in pushing it and getting certain high profile, personalities, celebrities, whatever, talking about this, they're just pitting women against each other. And that's what I don't like. And it's really hard to step away from. And this is where I think then women are too afraid to speak up. I have women who say to me, I'm too afraid to tell people that I came through menopause really, really easily. Because if I say that, I get jumped on and, and everyone just yells at me. It's like, her, someone who went through menopause easily, her story is as valid as someone who's not. But we're only allowed to talk about it doing it tough. We're not allowed to talk about it doing it easy, because if we talk about doing it easy, well, then we're dismissing everybody else. And so this is the toxicity. And I think we number one, need to be aware that this is happening. This divide is deliberate. And it happens to women all through our lives. We've got this divide going on, and it's not a gender divide. It's not between us and men. it's between women and women. And that's we're being pitted against each other. And I think we need to be aware that that is happening. And until that awareness comes, I think it's very hard to get rid of the toxicity, because everyone wants to own their own pain. They want to tell everybody how bad thing it is. And they don't want to hear that anything could be different. So it is really, really hard. And I think it takes a very strong person to basically, stand up and say, well, I'm not going to listen to that. I listen to my body. But there are women that will do that, and they just go, okay, well, you can just do your thing, say what you like. But they're generally not on social media anyway, so they're not actually being exposed to it, because they're just living their life and they're just getting on with it. And they naturally, there are women out there who naturally just go, well, look, I'm not putting up with this. And particularly once you get to this mid-stage of life, I think it becomes easier to tell people to go take a hike. It's like, yeah, you can be like that if you like, but yeah, I don't agree, and I don't want to put up with you. And it is easier. And that is also, that's actually hormonal, because as our estrogen levels come down, so our estrogen levels is a bit like our biddable hormone, our people pleasing hormone. So as estrogen starts to come down, we're not quite so great at people pleasing. Doesn't mean we don't love people, we don't love our family and things like that. We do still love them, but we're not there so much for people pleasing. And I think that's a great thing. That is a great thing, because that's when we get women who will stand up and say, I don't want to listen to your story anymore. And if we can get more women to do that, to stand up and just actually embrace the fact that estrogen levels, progesterone levels, they're not as high as they were before, but they will be where they need to be. And then we become, maybe that's the problem with hormones, is that women take hormones and then they don't get to this non-people pleasing stage, because they're still getting hormones, which tells them they've got to be happy with everybody. I don't know.
It is an interesting battle, because I feel like there's a lot of judgment, right? And there's a lot of fear.
Total fear, yeah. And confusion.
Because in
the last
messages, right?
Yeah, because in the last 24 hours, yes, I'm on social media, and because I'm in the middle of a launch at the moment, I'm spending more time on social media. I have seen the post that in Instagram, the feeds of two really high-profile doctors, OBGYNs. One says, every woman should be on hormones, and I'm going to take hormones for the rest of my life. The other one says, nah, hormones only for the people who want it for the minimal amount of time. So these are two high-profile OBGYNs who are in this stage of life as well. So, that you would say, well, okay, well, fine, I'll follow them. But two completely conflicting ideals. So then you have a woman sitting in the middle going, who do I listen to? And is it like, well, do I like the color of her hair? He's like, is like, because we got two totally different things. And someone who is not educated and isn't connected to their body, they're looking outside for an answer. And they go to these, unfortunately go look on social media, and you get two completely different stories. Is it any wonder women are confused? And they feel like they're left out, because if they follow one, it says everyone should be on HRT and I'm going to take it for the rest of my life. They follow them, they go, okay, if I don't, after that post, and that was this morning, I saw that post, she did a reel, and under it says, oh, but I feel great, I haven't had any symptoms, should I really be on HRT? And everyone's going, yes, you should, it's preventative for brain health, for this. And it's like, oh, but I'm 65, and because it's not recommended for women over 60 to be starting HRT because of the issues of cardiovascular disease and other things as well. It's like, so we've got women who have moved through the transition, and now they're scared because they haven't been on HRT, that now they're going to get these chronic diseases. And I saw that all through the feed, because I go and read these feeds to see what's going on, and then everyone's going, oh, no, you need to be taking it, and then they go, well, my doctor won't put me on it because of these XYZ risks. Oh, no, and so they're scared.
Yeah.
Like, so what we've got now is we're putting this fear into women, and we're putting a fear that, well, there's the FOMO bit, but then there's the fear that, okay, have I done something wrong? And in 20 years' time, I'm going to get all these chronic diseases, even though right now I feel the best I've ever felt. And that's what I find is it's frustrating. It's sad. And it's one of the reasons why I do the things I do. And one of the key things I do, I'm actually running a masterclass, is explaining to women how their hormones work. Because women don't understand this. They don't understand what happens. We don't learn it when we come in, into puberty and in our when we're reproductive years. All that most women know about their hormones is either I have a good period or I have a bad one. It's kind of it. And it's like, and if I have a bad one, I don't know why. We just blame everything on hormones. But it's sad that we're getting to this, the end of the reproductive life, and now is when I'm learning about hormones. But I think if women understand more about how the hormones work and how they interact with the brain, and so why does the brain change? How do they interact with the heart? How do they interact? Because the body does change. Without a doubt, when hormones come down, the body changes.
Yeah.
And we lose some protection. Yes, estrogen is really, really protective. So is progesterone. So is testosterone. They're very, very protective. But basically, rather than saying, okay, well, you've lost that protection, let's just put it back in. Why don't we say, okay, well, I've lost that protection. What do I need to do now to take responsibility and to protect myself? I can do that by eating well, by moving, by reducing toxins, by reducing my stress, by changing my belief systems. I can do that. I don't need to take a hormone to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because now it becomes your responsibility. Before, you can get away with a few things when you're younger. It's great. We can get away with things. We all know that. Who can drink as much in their 40s as they did when they're 20s? Who can go out partying till like 4 o'clock in the morning? They did in their 20s. It's like, we can't do that because our body's changed. Our lives have changed. And as our hormone shifts, our body will change. Now, our brain changes. The way we think changes. Now it's our responsibility. It's kind of time for us to step up and say, well, what does my body now need? What does my brain need now? Rather than going, oh, well, if I just put a pill in there, I'll fix the problem. I'm not saying it's not. HRT is required for some women. Mm-hmm. Some women certainly need HRT to get them through. I don't think it's something that someone needs for the rest of their life. I think we don't know enough about it. It's too new a drug, particularly bioidenticals, even though they are identical to the body. We're still putting higher levels in than what the body would normally have at this time of life. But there are women that do need it. I'm not saying that, we should just get rid of it completely. It is required for some women. But risks come with it. But we still need to take responsibility. Even if you're taking, the hormones, it is still your responsibility to be looking at the foods that you're eating, the way you're moving, the toxins, the stress and the mindset. It's like, because otherwise when you come off the hormones, which is what's recommended within 5 years that you come off the hormones, if you haven't dealt with the other 5 things, you're going to have bigger problems. Mm. So it's like, all of this is, the brain, it's getting all its information from the adrenal glands rather than the ovaries, but we need to support it. It's not just about hormones.
Mm-hmm. I think that there's something to be said about the fear factor setting us off maybe on a course that isn't best for us, because you mentioned the idea of knowing your own body. And in different conversations over the years, I think that's really a challenge for some people when it comes to health in general. One, understanding your own body enough to advocate for yourself. And then 2, to be able to communicate that to a doctor or find a doctor that will hold that space for how you feel about your own body. I mean, when we talk about this hormone conversation, it really is very quick. It's like quickly, like you see the things like, oh, well, you're a menopausal woman. That's normal. Just a blanket, like that's the way it is.
Suck it up.
Yes.
Yep. Just suck it up. Yep.
Yes.
As we would say here in Australia, suck it up.
But it's it's a very prevalent way of approaching it. And if we as women have not learned to trust ourselves in the way we know our bodies. And I think we do know our bodies. For many of us, we've born children. Our bodies have changed size and shape and periods, hormone surges, all of that. I think there's something to be said for learning to trust ourselves.
Yeah, and that's it. It's the trust and trusting your body, because, and this, I think, as women, and particularly women of a certain age, I'm hoping I know it's not quite so much. My daughter's 18, so I don't think it's quite as much these days, but basically we were taught we don't talk about this stuff. We're basically given them, and because we're not allowed to talk about it, there's something wrong. So we've been taught that there is something wrong with our body because we bleed every month. We had to keep it really secret, and in the past, women were sent away and things like that when they were bleeding. We don't talk about this. It's always been shame.
Yeah.
And so as women, we've taught, well, there must be something wrong with me because I'm ashamed of this. Every month I bleed. And then if it gets to I'm bleeding heavily, I've got lots of pain. I know that, I had fibroids and before I had my kids, and I know that, used to have to go and say, oh, look, I'm not feeling well. Go to, a 50-year-old white male and saying, I'm not feeling well. I need to go home from work. When I worked in corporate, I couldn't go and say, oh, look, I'm absolutely flooding out here and I'm, in so much pain, because people just looked at me and said, what the hell are you talking about? But this is it. So we've been taught to keep quiet about our bodies. We've been taught that there's something wrong with our bodies. The medical profession basically says, well, there's something wrong here, take a pill. Go take a pill. That'll just stop the bleeding, rather than why are you bleeding so much? What's going on? Why are your mood shifting? These things, what we consider to be normal is actually common. It's not normal. When it comes to periods, it is not normal to be having PMS symptoms. It's not normal to be bleeding heavily. It's not normal to be, for women who are having these massive mood shifts, not normal to be having big clots coming out of you. That's not normal, but it's very common. And this is the so-called, what they call the gaslighting, the words they use these days, is when you go to the doctor and they just go, oh yeah, that's just normal. You go to the doctor and I'm starting to get hot flushes. I'm putting on weight and I haven't changed what I'm eating. I've got joint pain. Oh yeah, that's just normal. It's just part of aging. Just live with it. It's not normal. It's common, but it's not normal. But when we're told it's normal, we as women then go, well, okay, there's nothing I can do about this because my doctor just said it's normal. I've just got to get on with it. It's just part of being a woman. It's like we're being punished for being a woman. Nature doesn't punish us for being a woman. There is a reason why all of this is happening. The woman's body is absolutely amazing. What can it do? It can actually reproduce new life. We birth new life. We nourish new life. It's like we create humans. And it's like we've got a fantastic, unbelievable body, yet we're just told that when things aren't going right, it's just part of being a woman. It's not. And that's what, and this is a big thing. I don't know if there's a book called Medicine Woman, and I can't remember who wrote it right now. And she talks about this a lot, where she was going to a doctor and she had, I think 2 of her kids had autism, and she must have been on the spectrum as well. And she was being dismissed, completely dismissed all of the time. Every time she'd go to the doctor, she was in the UK, she was working, it was through NHS. And she wrote this book about it. It's like how women's issues are dismissed. And in the past, it will be hysteria comes from basically, it comes from women going through menopause who are struggling, and they go, oh, she's hysterical. Let's just chop out her, give her a hysterectomy, chop out her ovaries and her womb, and then we'll solve all the problems. Because we've been oppressed. Haven't been allowed to stand up and speak our truth. We haven't been able to speak up for ourselves. So, and that's still there in Western culture. That is still there, very much so. And even if we might have women doctors and OB-GYNs and all of that, they were taught in a patriarchal system, and they're still not allowing us to connect with our body. And we don't either, because from a very young age, we were told to disconnect from our body. Like there's something wrong with your body. So, from time you're 11 or 12, you start to bleed, and you're kind of getting the message that there's something wrong because you bleed every month. And and that's the message. I'm sure you got that as growing up. I got that as growing up. We've got to hide this, having this period. And so at a very, very young age, we've taught that there's something wrong with our bodies. So when things go wrong, as you know, in our cycles as we get older, and particularly now as we come into menopause, then things are changing. We're told that that's just part of being a woman. So we think we're broken. And have you seen the Japanese art where a broken piece is put back together with
the
gold?
kintsugi?
Yeah, kintsugi.
Yeah,
that's what we are. It's like we feel like we're broken, but really we've got this gold running through us. We've got this beauty in there. And when we can actually pick the pieces up and actually put ourselves back together after we've been told that there's, so many things wrong with us.
Right.
When we can find ourselves again, that's where we find that gold. Find that gold that we have. And it was always there. The beauty was always there. The beauty in our body was always there. But we need to look at it in a different way. We need to see it in a different way. And this is a lot of the work that I do with women, and I work in genetic-based personalized health, is getting women to actually accept, embrace who they are. That, and it comes down to simple things as like, everyone says, oh, everyone should be on this type of diet. Everyone should be on a keto diet, a low carb diet, this diet, this diet. It's like, well, that depends, because people say to me, what's the best diet? And I go, well, that depends. What does your body require? And it does. It comes down to your genes. What are your genes? How is your body, how it's been built from the ground up from when you were a baby? If we took two animals, say we took a cheetah and we took an elephant, we wouldn't expect those two animals to eat the same food.
Right.
And that we wouldn't expect them to move the same way. We wouldn't expect them to do the same type of movement. We wouldn't expect them to be living in the same environment. So this is the same with humans. Some are tall and thin, and they're always tall and thin because that's the way their genes are. Some are, thicker and rounder and solid. They don't eat the same food. They weren't designed the same way. It's like finding out what your body requires. Some people are really great at starting exercise at 5 o'clock in the morning. Others, and that's what I used to try to do. And I did that, and I couldn't do it. I was always struggling. I had lots of injuries. I'm putting on weight. Now, no one gets to speak to me before 10 a.m. in the morning. I still wake up, but I go and sit in the sun. I read and have a really slow breakfast. So I have a really slow start to the day. But get me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm so strong and I'm so fit and I'm so, I'm fast. I can do that stuff in the afternoon because I've got a body that moves slower. When you start to understand that everybody is different in the way they were designed, and it's to do with their genes, it's to do with the environment when they're in utero, because this is what we call epigenetics. It's to do with the foods that you eat. It's to do with where you live. Then when you can understand that, then you can embrace who you are and live the life according to the way your body, your biology has been designed. And you don't have to do what everybody else says. And, this also comes down to our hormones, because everyone's different when it comes down to the changing in hormones as well. And the way the brain works. Brain plays the brain plays a really big role. Some people, my husband, you ask him something and he can give you an answer like that. Quick. He fires off really quickly. Me, I got to stop and think about it. Ask me a question, I've got to kind of have a bit of a think about it. And when I talk like now, you've probably realized I go in a big roundabout circle. And then you've got other people who would go, boom, boom, boom. That's your answer in three words. And because we're different.
Yeah.
And in the past, I used to say, oh, you're a rambler. But that's just who I am. And now when you can accept who you are, then you can step into the glory on a physical, emotional, spiritual, mental level. And it's like, just embrace that everyone is a unicorn, and it's great being a unicorn or snowflake, whatever you want to call it. It's like, that's who you are. You are a unicorn. Don't have to be like everybody else.
And that takes a lot of pressure off of that striving, right?
It does. And it's amazing. It gives women their confidence back, because this is another thing that I've seen for many women as they kind of come through this change. And once again, yes, hormones are playing a role with this, but they lose a lot of confidence, and they're in corporate roles, and they lose a lot of confidence because they're not thinking clearly, because the brain's going through these adjustments, and they kind of think, and I know that even for me, in the past, driving a car, I could drive anywhere. Now, there's some roads I'm not real, when we're on the big, and because where I live, I'm in the country, and if I want to get anywhere, I've got to go on the big highways to get in. It's like, sometimes a little bit, whereas in the past it never used to worry me. But now there's just that little bit of I'm not too sure. And I do it a lot now, so it's not quite as much of an issue. But when I very first moved here a few months ago, I didn't really want to go out on the highways because everyone was going really fast. And I'm used to just driving, out in the country roads where it is. It's like, and that's a loss of confidence. But when you can actually go, and now I go, well, okay, that's fine. I'm going to sit in my lane and do my thing. And I do the same with driving. It's like, I sit in my lane, I sit on the speed limit, and I don't care how many people want to fly in front of me. That's fine. I'll just do my thing. And that's what we as women, it's like knowing your lane, knowing how your body works, embracing the fact that your body is changing, and just going, okay, what have I got? What a great opportunity. I've now got this great opportunity. My body's changing. I can create what it is I want. I don't have to create what I had in my 20s. What do I want now? It's like you can do that. And, whether or not you want to change jobs, relationships, houses, whatever, it's like, I want to change nothing and just change who you are. That's there. That's this is a time of great opportunity. And yeah, I know where that went, but
no. So for people who haven't had the opportunity to go through your 5-day free workshop, you introduced the idea of body type, the ecto, endo, and mesomorph, and then the combinations where they cross over.
Yep.
And you mentioned that in terms of the stockier body, the leaner body, the sturdier body, the frailer, those people who look like if you blow on them, they'll break in half, but these are the ways that we're designed. And you were talking about when you pressed yourself to exercise at 5 a.m, because I believe Defender is the body type that we're talking about with the slower mornings. Diplomat. You talked about in your messaging how we sometimes can do, if you will, in quotations, we can live in a certain way because our job, our environment, or whatever seems to require that of us. But that is sometimes compounding some of our, to your point, injuries, tiredness, that sort of thing. And I think there's the one thing I liked about your program is getting people to even understand that physiological way that we're created, and how when we work with our design, then there's more opportunities to be successful as we transition in our bodies and as we're going through these kinds of things. And so there's a real freedom with this kind of information and understanding. And I think because as women, we have, especially in the Western world, had a very limited idea of what beauty is in the way our bodies are built. And even depending on where you're from, the color of your eyes, the color of your skin, we've, like you said, all these divisions where it's absolutely impossible for two people, unless they're even identical twins, but even they have subtle differences, for us to all look and be built a certain way. And so I wanted to introduce that idea, even though we're coming close to the end, that the way that you approach it is very powerful because it's foundational to who we are. It's not out there. This is your strength. These are where you are your strongest. And I think that's something that we as women, if we could turn the attention back to what do I bring to the table instead of comparing ourselves to what we think other people are bringing to the table.
Totally agree. And because, we've got women out there, and it's what we call the guardian health types, who are big, they're solid. And they're looking at a sensor which is tall and thin. And they're wanting a body because they have been told that because they are bigger and they've been told they're fat, and many of them are overweight. And the reason is because they're trying to live in a world that tells them being thin is good. So they're getting out there doing, boot camp in the morning. It's stressing the body. They're trying to live in jobs that are great for sensors or crusaders who are all tall and thin. So the guardians are trying to live the life of, another health type. And it's interesting, a friend of mine, and she's a guardian, she's a big woman. And like when you walk into her, just into her energy, she didn't have to say anything, but you feel like you're just getting this big hug from her. It's like you just walk into her energy. And that's what guardians are like. And they're very much about they're big mama bear. It's like they're very much about loving, everyone around them, their family, all of that. But a sensor tall and thin is, we depict that as like a bird. They're very flighty and they don't like too many people around. And if you get too close or things are, too much overpowering the senses, they back off. And this friend of mine, as I said, she's a guardian, and I was putting some work up on social media. And she says, I wish I was a sensor. And I went, actually, no. I said, you don't wish you're a sensor, because if you're a sensor, you wouldn't be the loving person that you were. You wouldn't be as connected to your community and your family. You would actually be sitting in a little room by yourself and you would be enjoying it. And you don't want anyone to go near you. So you don't want to be a sensor, because you might want to look like a sensor, but going and looking like a sensor, you have to give up everything else that comes with being who you are. When we start to, the people that are kind of vilified in our society, the big people who are just seen as obese, fat, and I'm not talking about health issues, but I'm just talking about, women who are bigger, they're solid, they've got solid muscles. These people, yes, they will tend to put weight on. Yes, they will tend to metabolic diseases. But these are the people that kept our society going from the time of the cavemen, because these are the people who can go without so that the people around them don't. Because they've got enough fat stores. They can actually go without food. When we were cavemen, they could go without food so the rest of the tribe could eat. And, that's what the bear does. They go into hibernation, and they can do that. When we can see the strength in these bigger, solid bodies, we need them, because as a society, we don't exist without this strength. And, when women can start to, accept that, I'm going to be, I'm 6'3" tall, and I'm a solid unit. That is absolutely fantastic. I was built for strength. I was built to support all of these other people because they need me. And I know I can do it because I'm so strong. Yet someone who is thin and tall and, very slight, they don't have the strength to do that.
Right.
They've got they got very quick minds. So we need them to be doing the mind thinking, and they love the spreadsheets. They'll do all the analytical stuff. We need that, because the guardian, they're not too concerned about, spreadsheets and data and all of that type of stuff. They just want to love everybody. It's when we can start to understand that our body gives us these messages, the body, our genes, all of this is written in our genes. And, it's how we develop, but we suppress that because we go to school. An activator is meant to be moving around all of the time. And this is one of we're doing a lot of research into this, and all these kids that are being diagnosed with ADHD, many of them are activators, and they've been told to go and sit in a chair for 8 hours a day and concentrate. An activator needs to move their body. They need to be up and around, and the child needs to be moving around the room and looking at this and looking at this, and the connector needs to be talking to different people. But our schooling system doesn't allow this. We as a company are actually going into schools here in Australia and actually bringing some of this personalized health in, so that when we can understand how a child is, understand their health type, we can then design a classroom based on what they require. And we get the activators up, moving every 15 minutes. We get the connectors going around and, talking, they're being like the class buddy and things like that. We're letting the diplomats do their stuff because they want to focus on their work. So when we can realize that from a very young age, and talking to the company's founder yesterday, he did a presentation, they're going down to as young as 2-year-old to be able to understand health types. And this is obviously based all on genetics, not a lot on epigenetics at this stage. And then creating a lifestyle that is right for that child as they develop and grow, so they have a full acceptance of who they are as they grow. And the world, parents, their family unit, and hopefully the schooling system will support them who they are as they are, rather than trying to put them into a box. So we were all put into a box, said, this is what the perfect child looks like. Yeah. And then what the perfect teenager looks like. This is what the perfect 20-year-old, 30-year-old, and now we're getting to, 50 and beyond. This is what the perfect menopausal woman looks like. And
which doesn't look that much different than what they told me was perfect at 20. I'm telling
Yeah,
you, it's the
I
same
know.
person. It's the same person who's really probably never struggled with their weight, probably
Yeah.
never really needed a super supportive bra. And, and their hair is graying perfectly. And it's just like, I don't even want to judge that person. I just want
Yeah,
women.
because they're probably all censors and crusaders, and and that's all the celebrities. Many of them are. They're censors and crusaders, particularly the women and the models and things like that, because that's what was desirable on the catwalk, is these tall, thin women. Yeah, and of course, hormones are different, and as we go through menopause, we all react differently based on our health type as well.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
and it's like, yes, you can put, some of these people on the front covers and saying, oh, well, this is how I'm, Elle Macpherson gets on the front cover. It's like, this is how I'm doing menopause. I'm taking these supplements. She was always going to probably look good. It doesn't mean she doesn't have symptoms and she's probably not talking about, but she's always going to look good because that's her genetics.
Yeah.
She's tall and thin. And, and then I don't know, there was someone that they had all these muscles and she was really buffed. And I can't remember who it was, but probably an activator grows muscles really, really easily. But
Mm-hmm.
what they're putting on the front cover is just what the body looks like. We don't know what's really going on. What else is going on, and what did it take to get to there? What did they sacrifice? And if it was an activated body, yes, they put muscles on very easily. But if it was, say, a diplomat body and they were trying to do that, there are consequences. If you try to do things that your body was not designed to do, we can do it for a long time. After menopause, there is not this menopause transition. It's almost a bit of if you don't start looking after your body the way it's designed, you're going to start to have more problems. And this is where we get into chronic disease. And menopause is kind of like a watershed. And that's why this is why I work in this space, why I work with personalized health, because it is that kind of, this is the opportunity. This is the time that if you learn what your body wants and start doing what your body wants and living that way, then you're going to have a long, healthy life. Or you can keep doing what the world's been telling you is, right, and it's not right for you. This is where you're going to start to see the cracks. This is where symptoms will go up. This is where you're going to have a bit higher risk of chronic diseases.
All right. So if you were to share 3 things you really want women to take away from this conversation, because it is deep, it is wide, there's a lot of what we feel is known information, which may not be accurate information. What 3 things can you help women start their journey on?
Number 1, I think, don't see this as the end. Menopause is not the end. You're not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. This is the opportunity. This is the opportunity for you to take control, for you to decide what it is you want for the next half of your life. Now, whatever that choice is. And if that choice is to take hormones, well, then that's fine. Make sure it's your choice, not what someone else, some social media doctor's telling you. You have the opportunity to make a choice. Start to listen to what your body says. And rather than seeing that there's things that are going wrong, what is it telling you? So if you've got pain going on, why is it? What's the pain? I tell you that 9.5 times out of 10, it's to do with the food that you're eating. So be honest with yourself. Is there something that you can do to change some of the food or alcohol? Alcohol is a big driver. And we didn't even talk about alcohol because that really impacts the brain because it can cross the blood-brain barrier. Unfortunately, women, as they're coming through this time of life, cannot drink alcohol like they used to in their 20s. You just can't, because estrogen and progesterone used to protect your brain. It's not there for protection anymore. So it's going to impact your brain. It's going to impact your health. And no one wants to hear this thing about alcohol. But honestly, giving it up is the best thing that you will do for your body, for your brain, for everything. And, it is just, I think it's an acceptance. I don't want to get into specific foods because it does depend on your health type, but making sure you're drinking lots of water, making sure you're getting a lot of sleep. And if you're not getting a lot of sleep, what's going on? Get it outside in the sunshine, get some, sun. When it gets to your brain, through your eyes, it gets to a certain part of your brain, it sets your circadian rhythms, helps you sleep better. So it's like, where can you look, which part of your life? You look at your food, look at your movement, look at your toxins, look at your stress, pick one. Where could I make a change? Where can I just make one little change? And it might just be to drink more water, or it might be to get outside in the sunlight. It might be just to go hug a tree. Whatever it is, just pick something and do it. And then once you get that done, then start picking another thing. Just make small changes. They all add up. So I don't know how many that was, probably more than 3, but really it is just an acceptance. You can't stop this. Every single woman, every woman who's ever had a period is going to go through menopause. The timing and the way that happens is different for everyone. There's no point fighting it. It is going to happen, whether you like it or not. So accept it, embrace it, and do what you can do to enjoy it, because I guarantee you it is fantastic on the other side. I do so much more stuff that I would never have done in my younger years. So it's like there is just so much. The world is there. We are blessed that we've got so many more years to go as we come through that transition. Because, you know, in the past, maybe they weren't living that long after their menopause transition. But, you know, I'm here till I'm 100. So a lot more years to go yet. And a lot more things, a lot more hikes to go on.
And how much more enjoyable when we are in a place of acceptance and understanding of who we are and how we fit into the world. It's really great. And so how can people find you? Now, I know that you're in between your 5-day workshops, but let's go ahead and talk about how people can reach you and how they can get on the waiting list for that, because it's really a great launching point for what we barely scratched today about the body types.
So the best place is just to go to my website. So AngelaCounsel.com. So AngelaCounsel.com. Go there. If you go to the work with me, all of my free programs and everything are all in there. And that's a good place to start. I also have a podcast called Menopause Conversations, which is on all the socials out, which are, you know, podcast platforms. Talk a lot about this. I talk a lot about health types and different things as well. So that's over there. And I have a Menopause Conversations Facebook group as well, free Facebook group. So we talk about same things, whatever's in the podcast and different things over there.
Okay, awesome. Well, Angela, as always, what a joy it is to have a conversation with you. I'm so glad our paths have crossed, that I'm able to have you back on this show, because the information that you share and how you share it, that piece about our physiology was really so powerful in my own life as a not thin, small person in the world, and just really appreciating, you know, understanding better how that is a powerful way for each of us as women, when we understand that, to move through the world, and just understanding the basic parts of menopause is puberty in reverse. It's natural. There's nothing wrong with us. It's not broken. And it's a journey that we can take that can feel good. And I'm so grateful for the wealth of information that you bring that empowers women to not be afraid or overwhelmed by this thing that we can't avoid. I'm just so grateful. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about this stuff, as you've probably realized.
Oh, yeah. I love this. I call you and I'm like, Angela's got this. I'll just smile and nod because it's such a wealth of So thank you again for doing that. I really appreciate it.
No problems.
Yes. And friends, if you feel connected to anything that Angela said today and you're on YouTube, just look down below. I'll have the link for you there so you can go straight there. If you're on a podcast platform, just head on over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 333, and I will have links to her there. Friends, this is one of those conversations that is so important that we share with our friends. And I'm going to encourage you to share this information and Angela's resources with other women, because we do need to understand better who we are and how our bodies work from our own feminine standpoint, not from the big pharma, not from the medical, not that it's all bad, but just so that we can be a part of the conversation. So it's not just happening to us, but we are part of the process and making decisions that are in a congruence with who we are and how our bodies feel. This is a powerful season of life, as Angela has said. She's passionate about it. She has resources. Share this with your girlfriends. Let's change the conversation around menopause. Let's make this something that's empowering. So thank you so much for joining us today, my friends. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share this conversations. Get this message out. You are the ones that are going to help us get it out to more and more people. Thank you for joining us today. I look forward to sharing more inspirational conversations, people, and strategies with you in the weeks to come. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.
Bye.